Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, where we will provide you fresh insights into South Asia's geopolitical, strategic and security situation. Let's take a look at the headlines first. India slams politicization of religion at UN, calls out Pakistan's narrative. Sindh human rights concerns raised at UNHRC, activists allege systematic abuses. And Kabul airstrike sparks outrage. Afghanistan-Pakistan tensions hit new low. India has delivered a strong and unambiguous message at the United Nations, calling out the dangerous politicization of religion on the global stage. In a pointed intervention, India's permanent representative to the UN, Ambassador Parvathaneni Harish, exposed Pakistan's repeated attempts to weaponize faith for political gain, while underscoring India's pluralistic ethos and commitment to equal respect for all religions. We have a report. At a time when global forums are increasingly witnessing selective narratives around religious discrimination, India chose to confront what it termed as a growing misuse of religion for geopolitical agendas. Addressing the UN, Ambassador Harish Parvathaneni directly challenged Pakistan's long-standing attempt to project itself as a victim of Islamophobia, calling out what he described as fabricated narratives designed to deflect attention from its own troubling human rights record. India's intervention comes against the backdrop of repeated efforts by Pakistan to internationalize issues related to Jammu and Kashmir and raise allegations against India at platforms like the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, claims that New Delhi has consistently rejected as baseless and politically motivated.
My delegation strongly condemns violence and hatred in the name of religion, regardless of the religion under question. As a nation where followers of virtually every major world religion coexist peacefully, and a nation that has given birth to 4 major world religions, namely Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, India, more than any other country, is acutely aware of the need for a world free from religious discrimination. The philosophy of Sarva Dharma Samabhava, implying equal respect for all religions, has been the civilizational way of life for India and one that inspired the secular ethos of the Indian Constitution.
Backing its position with facts, India highlighted its own diverse social fabric, home to over 200 million Muslims, making it one of the largest Muslim populations in the world. Unlike Pakistan's sectarian fault lines, India pointed out that its Muslim citizens actively participate in democratic processes, elect their own representatives, and contribute across sectors from politics and judiciary to business and culture. In Jammu and Kashmir as well, India underscored that elected representatives from the Muslim community continue to be an integral part of governance, countering Pakistan's narrative of alleged marginalization. Turning the spotlight firmly on Pakistan, India raised critical questions about its human rights record, particularly the systemic persecution of the Ahmadiyya community, who continue to face legal discrimination, social exclusion, and violence under Pakistan's constitutional framework. The Indian envoy also flagged the forced deportation of Afghan refugees, a move widely criticized by international human rights organizations, as well as ongoing military operations, even during the holy month of Ramadan, exposing what India termed as blatant hypocrisy in Pakistan's claims of defending Islamic values.
History bears repeated witness to how the politicization of religion does not solve and resolve grievances. However well-intentioned, they risk lending legitimacy to precisely this kind of selective, polarizing narratives that breed further division. The United Nations was conceived as an institution that transcends religion, culture, and politics.
India further cautioned against narrowing global discussions on religious discrimination to a single faith, warning that such selective frameworks could deepen divisions rather than resolve them. New Delhi reiterated that global efforts must address all forms of religious intolerance, what it described as religiophobia in all its manifestations, rather than allowing political interests to dictate the narrative.
The United Nations' greatest contribution to peace and human dignity lies in its efforts to maintain international peace and security, bringing everlasting peace in conflict situation, its development work and humanitarian action, and its promotion of universal human rights, work that is conducted without regard to the faith of those it serves. Global public goods, like sunshine, should be available to one and all, irrespective of affiliations. Public goods.
India's strong rebuttal also comes amid growing global scrutiny of Pakistan's internal instability, rising extremism, and its continued use of religion as a political tool, both domestically and internationally. By contrast, India positioned itself as a model of coexistence rooted in constitutional values, democratic participation, and centuries-old traditions of pluralism. The message from New Delhi was clear. Attempts to malign India on religious grounds will not go unanswered, especially when those raising such allegations struggle with their own record of intolerance. Allegations of human rights violations in Pakistan's Sindh province are once again drawing global attention, this time at the United Nations Human Rights Council. Activists have accused the Pakistani state of enforced disappearances, forced religious conversions, and the systematic silencing of dissent. The claims also raise concerns over rising religious extremism and growing demands for self-determination within the region.
On the sidelines of the 61st session of the UN Human Rights Council, concerns over Pakistan's internal human rights record have resurfaced, with Sindh emerging as a key flashpoint. Activists allege a sustained crackdown on political dissent in the province, with enforced disappearances and extrajudicial actions becoming a pattern over the years. According to claims presented at the forum, hundreds of Sindhi students and activists have gone missing over the past decade and a half, a trend that raises serious questions about Pakistan's commitment to international human rights obligations.
जहाँ हमने सिंध के जो मौजूदा सूरत हाल है, जैसे एक्स्ट्रा जुडिशल किलिंग्स और जो है कौमी कारकुनान, सिंध की कौमी तहरीक के कारकुनान को जबरन अगवा करके जो है मिसिंग कर दिया जाता है, और काफ़ी जो है 100 से ऊपर जो है अब तक मिसिंग है, और 350 से ऊपर जो है इन 15 सालों में मिसिंग हो चुके हैं.
What is particularly alarming is the reported targeting of minors, with cases suggesting that even teenage students have not been spared. Observers argue that such actions point to a systematic attempt to suppress emerging voices demanding rights and representation in Sindh, a province with deep historical and cultural roots. Alongside enforced disappearances, another deeply contentious issue raised at the UN platform is the alleged forced conversion of minority Hindu girls in Sindh.
फोर्स कन्वर्जन होता है जो है सिंध में सिंधी हिंदू बच्चियों को जबरन मज़हब तब्दील कराया जाता है. ये इशू लेके हम आज यूनाइटेड नेशन में शरीक हुए थे, जहां हमने ये भी बात रखी है कि सिंध में जो है रेफरेंडम कराया जाए. हम जो है सिंध में जो सिंध की तारीखी 7000 साल तारीखी तशक्कुस है, उनका कल्चरल है, और जो 7000 साल पुराना वतन है सिंधु देश, उसकी बहाली के लिए हमने आज यहाँ वाइज रेस किया है. और हमने रेफरेंडम की भी मांग की है यूनाइटेड नेशन से कि रेफरेंडम कराए सिंध में. हम अब पाकिस्तान में रहने के लिए तैयार नहीं हैं, हम सिंध में रेफरेंडम चाहते हैं, और ये रेफरेंडम यूनाइटेड नेशन अपनी सरबराही में कराया जाए.
Human rights groups have long flagged the vulnerability of religious minorities in Pakistan, but the Sindh situation underscores a troubling nexus between coercion, legal processes, and local power structures. Victims are often placed in shelter homes where allegations of intimidation and abuse further complicate the pursuit of justice. At the same time, Pakistan's controversial blasphemy laws are once again under scrutiny. Blasphemy laws in Pakistan have frequently been weaponized not just against minorities but also against voices challenging state narratives.
ब्लास्फेमी का मैं आपको बता दूं कि जैसे रिसेंटली वाक़या हुआ था डॉक्टर शाहनवाज कुंभर को, उसका कसूर ये था कि उसने सिंध के वसीलों की बात की, सिंध के जो है मादनियात की बात की, उस पे हक सिंधियों का जताने की बात की, और जो है सिंधी हिंदुओं को जो जबरन मज़हब तब्दील कराया जा रहा था उस पे उसने स्टैंड लिया। तो उस पे झूठी बुनियाद पर, ब्लास्फेमी की बुनियाद पर जो है गुस्ताख रसूल कहकर और कुरान का जो मुखालिफ कहकर उसको जो है पाकिस्तानी रियासती इदारों ने उठाया और जो है उसको जो है दिन दहाड़े गोलियां मार के उसको जो है शहीद कर दिया, जिस पे पूरी सिंध उठी। सिंध ने इसको रेजिस्ट किया, मजहबी इंतहा पसंदी और ब्लास्फेमी को, जिसका रिजल्ट पूरी दुनिया ने देखा।
Beyond rights violations, there are also warnings of a deeper ideological shift within Sindh. Activists claim that rising religious extremism and the spread of radical networks are altering the province's historically pluralistic fabric, a region once known for its syncretic traditions and communal harmony. These developments have also reignited calls for political self-determination. Demands for a referendum, once considered fringe, are now being voiced more prominently on international platforms, reflecting growing discontent within the segments of Sindhi society. As these allegations echo at the United Nations, they present a broader challenge for Pakistan, balancing its global commitments with mounting internal dissent. For Sindh, the question is no longer just about rights, but identity, representation, and an uncertain political future.
Amid escalating regional tensions linked to Iran, fresh allegations are emerging from Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan of a sweeping crackdown on dissent. Activists claim that local leaders are being preemptively detained to suppress unrest in the strategically sensitive region. The developments once again raise concerns over Pakistan's tightening control in occupied territories and its pattern of silencing voices that challenge state authority. A report.
Even as Islamabad remains preoccupied with regional volatility tied to Iran, troubling reports are surfacing from Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan. Activists allege that authorities have launched a preemptive crackdown targeting political voices and community leaders in the Shia-majority region. According to these claims, several prominent figures have either been detained or confined to their native villages, effectively restricting their ability to mobilize or communicate. Observers argue this reflects a broader strategy by Pakistan to maintain a tight grip over POGB, a region long accused of being denied basic political rights, constitutional status, and freedom of expression. The timing of these alleged detentions is particularly significant. Experts suggest Islamabad fears internal unrest, especially if regional tensions escalate further, prompting authorities to silence influential voices before any potential protests can take shape.
लेकिन गिलगित बल्तिस्तान में अगर आप देखें तो हमारे जो मकामी रहनुमा हैं उसमें एडवोकेट एहसान है, एडवोकेट नफीस हैं, इंजीनियर महबूब हैं, मसूदुर रहमान हैं, फिदा इसार हैं, तारुफ अब्बास हैं और इस तरह के बहुत से दूसरे लोग हैं, शेख यूसुफ हैं। बल्तिस्तान के अंदर आप देखें नज़र काज़मी है, फिर शबीर मयार, उनको तो ऑलरेडी उन्होंने अपने गांव तक महदूद किया हुआ है। तो इन लोगों की पकड़ दकड़ जो है वो हो रही है क्योंकि उनका ख्याल है कि गिलगित बल्तिस्तान में कोई भी शख्स शऊर रखता है कोई भी शख्स जो लोगों को सड़कों पे ला सकता है, जो लोगों को इंफॉर्मेशन दे सकता है, ऐसे आदमी को प्रीएम्प्टिव जो है वो प्लान के तहत उनको अरेस्ट किया जाए, इलाके में खौफ फैलाया जाए, और ताकि आने वाले दिनों में अगर सऊदी अरब की मदद करनी पड़े तो पाकिस्तान के जिन जिन इलाकों में एहतजाज वगैरह हो सकता है वहाँ पर लोगों को एहतजाज से रोका जाए।
The allegations once again spotlight the fragile human rights situation in Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan. Despite its strategic importance under the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, the region continues to face accusations of political marginalization, enforced restrictions, and systemic disenfranchisement. Human rights groups have repeatedly pointed to a pattern of arbitrary detentions, curbs on free speech, and heavy surveillance in the region. Islamabad's governance model in POGB mirrors its approach in Balochistan, where dissent is often equated with disloyalty and suppression becomes a tool of control. With sectarian sensitivities and geopolitical tensions intersecting, activists warned that the situation in Gilgit-Baltistan could further deteriorate if dissent continues to be stifled rather than addressed.
हमारी दरख्वास्त है अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा से कि कोई भी शख्स जिसको सिर्फ इस बात पे कि वो गिलगित बल्तिस्तान का रहने वाला है, वहाँ का जो है ना मकामी है और पाकिस्तान के कब्ज़े के ख़िलाफ़ बात करता है, उसको इस वजह से गिरफ़्तार करना जो है बिल्कुल नाजायज़ है। अगर उनका ईरान के जंग से कोई बराह रास्त कोई ताल्लुक़ नहीं है तो फिर उनको आप किस वजह से जो है ना तंग कर रहे हैं, गिरफ़्तार कर रहे हैं। तो अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा से हमारी अपील है कि इस इशू के ऊपर जो है वो पाकिस्तान को नज़रसानी करने के लिए कहे और पाकिस्तान के ऊपर दबाव बढ़ाया जाए अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा के तमाम मेंबरान की तरफ से कि वो जो अपने शहरी हैं और मकबूजा इलाकों के रहने वाले हैं, जैसे कि बलोचिस्तान या गिलगित बल्तिस्तान है, उनके लोगों को तंग करना और उनके लोगों को ज़िंदगी को जीर्ण करना बंद करें।
As calls for international scrutiny grow louder, the situation in Pakistan-occupied Gilgit-Baltistan underscores a recurring theme, where geopolitical priorities appear to overshadow civil liberties. For many in the region, the question remains whether global institutions will act on these warnings or whether yet another cycle of alleged repression will pass without accountability.
A devastating airstrike in Kabul has pushed Afghanistan-Pakistan tensions to a dangerous new low. What Pakistan claims was a targeted military operation is being widely condemned as a strike on civilians, including patients at a rehabilitation facility in Afghanistan. With hundreds feared dead and global concern mounting, the incident has once again exposed the volatility of the region and the growing humanitarian cost of escalating hostilities. We have a report.
Kabul woke up to the scenes of devastation. Thick plumes of smoke billowed over the capital as emergency teams rushed to the site of a destroyed drug rehabilitation center known locally as the Ahmed Camp. What stood hours earlier as a functioning medical facility had been reduced to rubble with burnt vehicles, twisted metal and bodies buried beneath collapsed structures. Rescue workers described a night of chaos and horror. Ambulances struggled to keep pace as the injured poured in, while teams continued to pull bodies from the debris well into the morning. The scale of casualties has shocked even seasoned responders, pointing to the intensity of the strike in a densely populated civilian zone.
یعنی میشه دینا شب دیگه تهران یک دوره اومد میشه دمی سر می کمپ امید زد بعد از همی بسیار حمله وحشتناک میشه قرار گرفت دیگه بسیار با همدردای ما همیشه از دست دادیم تقریبا از شب تا نمیال یک 200 نفر ما همیشه با دست خود جسدا را کشیدیم.
The Taliban administration has squarely blamed Pakistan, calling the strike a direct assault on civilians. Afghan officials say the facility housed hundreds of vulnerable patients and medical staff with no evidence of any militant presence. They describe it as one of the deadliest incidents since tensions between the two countries escalated earlier this year.
در رابطه با قضیه بمباردمان شب گذشته از طرف رژیم نظامی پاکستان همه دنیا مطبوعات دنیا مشاهده میکنند که حتی یک فرد نظامی و اسلحه اوجا وجود نداشته. همه هدف تاسیسات غیر نظامی و افراد ملکی بوده. طبعا مرکز تداوی معتادین که 1000 بستر بود، در این مرکز جز معتادین و تیم صحی ما دیگه هیچ کسی وجود نداشت.
Islamabad, however, has rejected these claims. Pakistan maintains it carried out precision airstrikes targeting terrorist infrastructure, insisting that its actions were part of a broader counter-terrorism campaign. But the competing narratives have only deepened mistrust, with Kabul calling the strikes a blatant violation of sovereignty and international law. At the heart of this conflict lies a long-standing dispute over militancy. Pakistan accuses Afghanistan of harboring fighters from the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan or TTP, an outfit responsible for a surge in deadly attacks across Pakistani territory. Kabul has consistently denied these allegations, arguing that Pakistan's international security failures are being externalized through cross-border military action. The crisis also reflects a dramatic breakdown in relations. Pakistan, which once backed the Taliban's rise to power, now finds itself locked in one of its most serious confrontations with Kabul in decades. Despite mediation attempts by regional players like China, the conflict has continued to intensify, raising fears of sustained instability along the 2,600-kilometer border. The humanitarian impact is becoming increasingly severe. According to Afghan authorities and UN estimates, hundreds have been killed, many of them women and children, while thousands have been displaced. The United Nations has reiterated that medical facilities and civilians must be protected under international law, warning that such strikes could amount to serious violations.
Today, in a statement, the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan said that yesterday at around 9 p.m. in Kabul, an airstrike carried out by Pakistani military forces impacted the Umid Addiction Treatment Hospital, a healthcare facility for the treatment of drug-addicted individuals, dozens of whom were reportedly killed and injured. UNAMA expresses its deepest condolences to the families of those killed and wishes a speedy recovery to the injured. The UN mission stressed that under international law, all parties to a conflict must respect and protect the sick and wounded, medical personnel, hospitals and ambulances, and attacks on hospitals and civilian facilities are strictly prohibited.
India has also taken a strong position condemning the airstrikes and calling them a flagrant violation of sovereignty and international norms. New Delhi has underscored the humanitarian toll, particularly given that the strikes occurred during the holy month of Ramzan.
India strongly condemns the airstrikes on Afghan territory, which are flagrant violations of international law and the UN Charter and the principle of state sovereignty. It's hypocritical to espouse high principles of international law and Islamic solidarity on the one hand, while mercilessly carrying out airstrikes during the holy month of Ramadan that have killed 185 innocent civilians as of 6th March, around 55% of whom are women and children, and displaced over 100,000 according to the UNAMA on the other.
With both sides entrenched in their positions and violence escalating, the path to de-escalation appears increasingly uncertain. For Afghanistan, the immediate concern remains the humanitarian fallout. But for the wider region, the episode raises a far more serious question whether Pakistan's cross-border strategy under the guise of counter-terrorism is fueling a deeper and more dangerous instability in South Asia.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We'll be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@nin.com. This is Shivangi Mishra signing off on behalf of the entire team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.